I wanted to put something together, just something small and quick to give you just a whole bunch of information on what to look for when you're buying a new property, or just point out some things in a property that you should just consider or look out when you're looking at building your own place or designing your own place. I'll go through a couple of photos of what's typical in a rental or in a property. Here is a picture of showing just down a wall in a development where we see in these developments, in new buildings, we're cutting the land up a lot smaller, and it is a concern of mine. 400 square meters, 500 square meters regarded as a large block, and we're building the entire block of the house out. We're putting the house from one end to the other end, to the two sides, and having a fence around with no backyard and so on. It's a concern for me. But it's the way that it's done. As soon as we reduce the frontages of houses, we find that we need to reduce the garage. When you reduce the garage, realistically you can't get two cars in there properly and open doors and be comfortable, so only one car goes in the garage. Often no cars will. People have two cars, so what happens with the cars? They're parking in their driveway and they're parking in the streets. So you will find the streets in older suburbs completely clear. The street looks clear. Go to the new developments, there are cars parked all along the streets. In my opinion, dangerous. Kids come out, you don't see them. They run out in front of cars. When you're reversing out, you can reverse into cars. I hated it. I absolutely hated it when being in that area for a while and renting, and just feel claustrophobic in it. And it's dangerous, and it makes you feel like you're just in this place that's just got cars all over this place, and I just want to park in my own garage. So that all comes back to wanting to carve up the land into these tiny spaces, fit more people in, and not having enough place to put your cars. So anyway, that's my little rant about decreasing frontages and smaller pieces of land. But on this initial photo, I just wanted to show you that down this wall you will always look at where the utilities are. Here we have an air conditioning system, a split system. This is the outdoor unit of it, sitting on the outside. There's another one down the other end. And you can see the fence on the other side. This is as broad as it is. This is exactly the same on the other side. And in fact, the so-called backyard might be 2 meters, maybe 2.5 meters. We can't fit much in there. And this is a problem because everyone's utilities are backing up onto everyone else's. So especially when it comes to gas, and you've got hydronic heating, you've got the gas discharge coming out all near your property. It's the same thing with gas boosters and the carbon monoxide and the gas discharge. There is all of this, there's much more of a concentration of when you're living close to one another. Also the noise, these things all make a noise. So the noise becomes a factor. When everyone starts using them, we just got this noise pollution through everything. You've got it right next to you. There's the electromagnetic fields. If you have a bed on the other side of this wall, you've got high electromagnetic fields where all these utilities are. So think about when you're planning where those utilities go. Put them on walls of laundries, of walk-in robes, of places not behind bed heads, not behind couches in living areas, not behind areas basically where you're going to spend extended periods of time. That's why I'm showing you this type of thing. Have a look around the building, and when you're planning, have a look where you're going to put those utilities and just keep them away from where you spend extended periods of time. So that's the reason for showing that one. I'm showing this second photograph because if you look over the fence at the neighbor, that is their gas discharge for their hydronic heating. Now, basically that discharges and literally discharges over the fence where you've then got your windows, where you could be outside, and you can see just how close it is, and this is quite common these days. Just an example of why I don't like to be that close. This is again the gas booster for hot water system, and again that is close to a window. There are all sorts of regulations on how far it needs to be. In my opinion, not good enough. This is very close to what will be, that's a fixed glazing, but the operable window is right next to it. If you've got prevailing breezes, a lot of carbon monoxide. Carbon monoxide does dissipate very quickly in outdoor air, but that carbon monoxide can be blown by breezes from that gas boosting system into the window and into the indoor air. That's why there are regulations to keep it off. and away from operable windows, but in my opinion, not far enough. But that's what that looks like. So just be mindful of it, as well as seeing that it's not near the back of bed heads and so on, with power points and electromagnetic field considerations. This is again another shot. There's the meter box on the wall. Where the white wall starts, that is the outdoors. The other side of that meter box is the bed head of the main bedroom. This is what drives me absolutely nuts. I can't even tell you, I get quite emotional. In fact, when I see, because of the amount of cases I've gone to, when I see meter boxes put on the back of bed heads, long-term exposure, in my opinion, it can be a real problem in terms of adverse health effects. Of course, it will meet all Australian standards, no problem at all, Panza and so on. I'll tell you there's no issues at all with that. And in my opinion, there are some deep concerns. Keep the meter box off main bedroom bedhead walls, please. You will see all the mains cabling coming in and out of that box. There's a smart meter in that box. It is not something you're supposed to sleep behind. In Sweden, they don't even put meters onto walls. I can't understand why would you put a meter onto a wall, let alone a bedhead wall. So they are actually kept out into the front of the property, and that's what we recommend. Put them next to the post box and run your cabling through. Don't put the meters up on bed heads, please. If that's all got to be done, put it on the garage side. Yes, there'll be a bit more cabling, but please, it is so worth it. Keep that meter away from bed heads, the back of couches, things like that. It's imperative. So just showing you where the meter box is located, in my opinion, is a very big consideration. This is showing you now, just on the outside of the building, this is what they call an apron, a sort of concrete apron, where it's lovely because, well, it's not lovely looking, but it's lovely in the way that it will slope away from the building and it will keep water off those walls. And this is something that the volume builders, after many years of having enormous amount of trouble and hassles and insurance claims and issues with buildings, have said, right, we are now insisting that you have a 1 meter concrete apron all around the house so that water goes away. And in fact, they don't want you to plant within 5 meters of the building because of invasive root systems. This never used to be the case. And it's great. It looks ugly. It's horrible, but this certainly serves a purpose. Not that you have to do this, but I just wanted to show you'll see this pop up more and more and why it's there, to keep water off the building envelope. It's a good thing, but an ugly thing. Not necessarily what you have to do, but you do need to keep water off the building and slope that land away from the building. So that's what that photo is all about. On this side, this is the south side of the building. And you probably can maybe see it or not. What I wanted to see is if you look at the left-hand side of this photo, these are 2 buildings that are right next to one another. The builder built both of them all exactly the same. But you can see the weep hole is literally at ground level on the left-hand side. That is that slit in the brick where moisture can escape from the wall cavity. And on the right-hand side, it's on the second course of bricks above ground level. They should all be like the right-hand side. They need to be 100 mil above ground level. Why are those down at ground level and these are 1 course up and 100 mils above ground? They should all be like that, 100 mils above ground. So make sure your weep holes are up above the ground level so the water can't get into them. You can see all of, not only are they ground level, but you can see all the green growth if you look at the left-hand side one. All of that lichen and moss growth, because it doesn't get any sunlight, plus the weep holes are low, it's not ideal. So that's what that photo is showing you. Get the weep holes up and off ground level. There's just showing you in more detail where you can see nicely that weep hole at ground level and the green lichen and moss growth. Not great. And there you're showing how it should be. And these are buildings right next to one another, built by the same builder. So you draw your own conclusions from that. Here we have another photo, basically showing you that this is the north side of the right-hand building and the south side of the left-hand side building. I presume you're looking at the photo same way as I am. The grey bricks, that is south-facing. and these creamy bricks, they're north facing. Now, this should be a north backyard. It's not a north backyard. It has an eave on it to protect from the sun. And then it has the neighboring property so close to it that basically how are you going to get any light in this place? I was in this house. I'm telling you, it got no light. It got slithers of light for maybe an hour in a day as the sun was in that gap between the two buildings. As soon as it came over, these houses are too close together. And if you look at the sun, it creates a shadow, and that shadow means you're going to get very limited sunlight. This house will have mold issues. No, undoubtedly, it can just be from shading. Can't tell you the amount of houses that have issues just from shading, and so much moisture builds up because you don't have natural sunlight. Natural sunlight is critical in a building. How many times do you go to a property and you go, oh, look at all the light. Look at this magnificent natural sunlight. It makes us feel good. It's essential to life. Please don't limit the natural sunlight. Don't go to properties that have a north side that are completely shaded by other buildings that are close, or by trees that can't be cut down, or by areas in the north that are covered. I'm talking about Victoria. Victoria is where we live, is a temperate climate. It's cool, it's cold. We need the sunlight for most of the months of the year. Of course, this varies if you're up in Queensland or you're in other areas where you're trying to fight the heat, and that is just inviting because it's cooling. This is all dependent on the climate in your area. But where I'm coming from is here in Victoria, in cooler temperate climates. We need the sunlight, and in the summer months when we get those stinking summers, then we need adjustable shading, and we can bring it out and we can protect the building for that time when it's needed. But for the 9 months of the year where we just really want the sunlight, let it in, and then have adjustable shading on the outside of the building to stop sunlight when you need it for the shorter amounts of time during the year, rather than just trying to tailor all houses around the country in the same way. They have different weather patterns, they have different needs. All right, so that's why I'm showing you this, because it's incredibly important to know where sun is going to affect your property, and make sure you can get it. Make sure buildings are far away from your north side. You want all of that sunlight that you can get. Believe you me, you can get away with a lot in terms of mold and moisture if you get a lot of natural sunlight. And you will have issues, and you'll have cold houses, and you'll have uncomfortably feeling houses if you don't have natural sunlight. And we'll show you in our particular project how much natural sunlight we have tried to capture. Again, so we don't have to use lights internally, all sorts of advantages. All right, this is to show you what I mentioned earlier in the discharge. There you have a beautiful view of the discharge of the gas, where you can see the sort of discharge of gas on a cold morning, where that hydronic heating's working the neighboring property and is just being blown towards your property. Yeah, not the nicest of views. The next one is a shot taken at night. This is just to show you that this is taken from a bedroom, and there is a light, a night light, that works on a sensor that goes on and off all the time. It's just bewildering. Light is what disrupts sleep to such a great degree. And when you're close to neighboring properties, that light is enough to disrupt you during the evening. I know there are block-out blinds and the things you do, everything to try and block it out, and that is critical. But the amount of times that light was on, and then you have these blinds, and if you have an open window because you want fresh air, the blinds bang against the architraves. Then you try desperately to put these fluffy, sticky things on blinds to try and stop the banging, and it's total nonsense. But this is to show you that when you're living closely, this can be a problem. Have a look out at if there's an outdoor area there and they have a light shining straight into your main bedroom. You're going to need very good block out to stop that. But then think about opening windows and having fresh air, and then how much that will let in the light and cause noise and all sorts of factors. So just keep that in mind. You will see how we've addressed that in our project, where we use curtains that go right across, that don't make a noise, that you can open windows when they're there, completely block out light and make it dark in the room. But yeah, blinds are just a pet hate of mine. But yeah, anyway, that just shows that. I try not to go on too much on stuff that I really have a big thing about. This is the discharge from the hydronic system, just the overflow of water. This water is just allowed to spew out onto the ground. You can see that even though you have that concrete apron we're talking about to take water away from the building, you can see how it affects the brickwork. I did this at night because that's when people have the hydronic heating starts going on in those as the sun goes down. Look at the amount of water that is discharged from just a hydronic system. Hot water systems do the same. They all have an overflow where this water goes out. Please, you must have the overflow going into stormwater drainage, not just spewing out onto the ground. This is essential. It looks gross. You will see it's completely discolored, that concrete paving. It's affecting the wall and the building envelope. Water must be kept off the building envelope. That's why that whole apron's put there. Why allow the water to just spew out? When there are many drainage points, there's stormwater drainage all down there. Tap that into the stormwater drainage. And you will see again on our project where we have had hot water systems where their discharge is, we tap it into stormwater. It goes into stormwater, it's all plumbed, it goes away, it's kept off the building envelope. But that's just to show you what is completely common, but photos are not taken enough of it. But there's one for you. And here we go, just showing you from a distance. There's the hot water, the hydronic system, and the discharge and to what degree it is affected there. So those are just a couple of pointers and just my passion in terms of very little. We could go on for days about the considerations, but I just wanted to give you a couple of things. Please look at how big a frontage you've got, your piece of land, all of the buildings around you and how many neighbors and how close they are, and light in terms of backyards and getting enough natural light in, where the prevailing breezes are, where there are polluting sources. So we don't want prevailing breezes. We have the Surf Coast Highway up here. Surf Coast Highway is in the west. We are dominated by westerlies. That means the breeze is blowing from a real pollutant source towards buildings and properties if you're to the west of that polluting source. If you're within 200 meters of a very busy road, all the research shows this golden figure of 200 meters, that's potentially a big issue. So be further away than 200 meters if you can see the prevailing breezes are going to bring you all of these pollutants. The noise factor, I can't tell you the noise factor when we're within 200 meters. So noise is an issue, vehicle emissions are an issue. And look at things like industry. And if you're close to ports, truck routes, all of these things are issues. I can't tell you the amount of properties in places like Williamstown and Newport and areas that are around the port where there are enormous truck routes, the emissions and the black dust, that's brake dust, that's vehicle emissions and diesel particulate and so on, that is just settling in people's properties, and they're always wiping it away and go, why is it so dusty and what is all this? It's from vehicle emissions and it's from industry. Look at where it is and look at prevailing breezes. If you've got something close but your prevailing breezes are always blowing from your property towards this emission source, not a problem. But if the dominant winds, and when I say dominant, I mean those are your most prevailing winds, you'll get them from different directions all during the day and the year. But try and see, for example, where this property is located, we have southerlies that dominate a lot because we're close to the ocean and it's in the south, but it's coming off the ocean and there's nothing between us and the ocean besides some homes and roads, common, suburban roads. Westerlies do dominate, but again, any emissions are far, far up, and we are a long way from those busy roads and emissions there. We hardly ever get any easterlies, northerlies, again, there's also nothing, farmland and so on. So this is important. And then look at phone towers and 5G, and this will become more difficult with 5G having to bring everything much closer to your property. Our biggest concern is the fact that 4G needs to come so closer. That's a problem because 4G is consistently transmitting and needs the strength to pull it out. 5G is not as powerful, being a much smaller microwave and so on. Can't get through walls and so on as well as the 4G and the 3G technology. So my biggest concern, yes, there may be some 5G issues, that's for sure, but the fact that you're bringing 4G so much closer to building that, and it transmits all the time, doesn't just transmit when in use, that's a big problem. And it's a blanket, it's not, beamforming and so on. So anyway, a little thing about that, but just consider what's happening in your area. It can be difficult in built up areas, but it's another consideration. But otherwise, those are just the basic aspects, just some things to help you out in terms of when you're designing and when you're looking at a rental or a new place to buy. Hope these pointers just help you out.